talking about energy. I like to have a lot of fun. But when I give a workshop, I teach a lot of workshops around the world. I focus on the students. So if you guys have questions, if you guys around the world have questions, I want to hear from you. I am here to help. Everyone who comes on one of my workshops is a student for life or comes to one of my seminars. So if you don't get your question answered here, you send me an email at ricksammon@me.com. Those of you who have sent, did I ever send you an email did you guys ever send an email that I did not answer? No. Ask on the web if anyone sent me an email that I did not answer. I answer everything if people say hi, Rick, and thank you. So anyway, I'm here to help. Just an example of my teaching things, because I would like those of you who don't know me to get to know me a little better. I'm so focused on the students when I'm out there. Here, I was out in Montana, and I'm photographing this mama bear. So she's growling, and the tip here is, watch the background, have a relatively clean background, and look for the peak of action. A sports photographer does this too. If you have a basketball player on the ground, on the court there, it looks okay. But if you get him like jumping up like this, the peak of action. One of the things you're going to learn this weekend is that what you learn in one area, like I just illustrated, is you learn in one area, you can apply it to yet another area. Thing is, sometimes I get so focused on helping the students, Chris, and everyone else, and Emily, and Lori, and Carol, and Dave, and Dramil, is I forget what's going on around me. So I'm teaching this workshop. I'm teaching the workshop, and I'm helping someone figure out what custom function 42 is on their camera. If you come on my workshops, you have to know your camera. And we were talking about that, Emily, right? Well, I was so focused on helping them, I wasn't paying attention to what was going on around me. So the bear's cub started crawling up my leg. These are real bear claws, digging into my blue jeans. This is bear slobber on my lens in the bottom right-hand corner of the lens. And then it came up and took a little bite out of me. Now, Craig Swanson, who's feverishly working up there on everything, he's known me for a long time. He knows that before this picture was taken, my voice was a lot deeper. Right, Craig? It's true. But anyway, I have a lot of fun on my workshops. For those of you who are listening around the world, everyone here is a Canon shooter? Everyone here? Oh, Craig's laughing. He's waving. He's going like this. Everyone here is a Canon shooter with an SLR. It doesn't matter if you have a point-and-shoot camera. It's not about the gear. It's about the camera. It's about your vision. The most important thing in the picture, in taking a picture, and I haven't mentioned this yet, is what? I was going to say, what do you think the most important thing in a picture is? I'm asking the students. That's why they're here. It's the mood. It's the feeling, okay? It's not the, you could be a little over, a little underexposed. It could be out of focus. My tip on, here's a quote, if people are looking for quotes. I love these smiles over here with Susan and Kenna. One out of focus picture is a mistake. 20 out of focus pictures is a style. So it's really all about the mood. So it doesn't really matter. Let's explore the light. I think I've gotten most of the jokes out of the way, if you want to call them jokes. But this is serious now. Let's explore the light, because it's the main element in every picture that my friend John over there has taken, that every instructor here at CreativeLive has taken. It's the main element of every picture I'm going to show you. It's all about light. That's why this class is actually called Exploring the Light. You have to pay attention, because I'm going to ask you guys questions during this. So the most important thing in photography is, oh, the students are going like this. Oh, no, you're going to put me on the spot. I'm mic'd. I've never been mic'd. I've never been on live TV. Anyway, the most important thing is seeing the light. I took this picture out in Bosque del Apache in New Mexico, doing a workshop there later this year, but they have just beautiful, beautiful light. So the first thing is we have to learn how to see the contrast range in the scene. So this is good that you guys are writing this down, because we're going to review these as we go along. The first thing is learn how to see the contrast range in the scene. So here's a very high contrast range, right? Someone asked about the tripod before. Very high contrast scene, from very bright outside to very dark inside. I had to use HDR photography to capture that dynamic range in the scene. If we don't learn how to see the light, we don't know what we have to do. Here I'm controlling the light with HDR photography. right? By the way, here's the average exposure, 2 stops under, 2 over, 3 over, 4 over, 5 over on the bottom row. For those of you who are into HDR photography, it's not always 0 plus 2 minus 2. But again, it starts with seeing the light, and it starts with capturing the dynamic range. I mentioned reflectors. John, could you dash over and bring over this reflector and diffuser? Okay, a reflector, wait, you're going to hold these, and I'm going to hold the flash, because all these things do the same, well, they do different things, but they have something in common. The flash can compress the brightness range in the scene, right? We're going to learn in this class how to, and this was, I think, one of the questions yesterday, how to balance the light, the available light to the light from here. This can compress the brightness range. A reflector, by filling in the shadows, maybe you could even actually do this a little, right? It fills in some of the shadows. It compresses the brightness range of the scene. The diffuser, if you hold this, yeah, well, we have the gold side here and the silver side here. I don't usually use the golden side, but we will be doing this. And here we have a diffuser. We have a diffuser which compresses the brightness range if it's sunny outside. So it's all about seeing the light, okay? Here's a high contrast range. If we know we're looking at high contrast, we know if we're shooting into the sun, we're going to get dramatic shadows. Everywhere where there's high contrast, we're going to get dramatic shadows, and I'm going to be talking about shadows as we move along. I took this down, but actually at the California Photo Fest. It illustrates a couple of techniques, one of which is when you're photographing a subject, you don't want to decapitate the subject with the horizon line. So this is what I'm looking for here. And plus use, standing up straight. It illustrates the rule of thirds, illustrates getting all the hooves off the ground. It illustrates a lot of different things. Anyway, high contrast means really strong shadows. I took this out of the California Photo Fest too. Low contrast, we don't have those strong shadows. So if you want nice soft light outdoors without one of these accessories, what you want to do is shoot on an overcast day, or my tip, if they're looking for tips, you snooze, you lose. I don't want to give away all my one-liners before, but you want to get it before the sun comes up. You look at movies. A lot of movies are shot before the sun comes up and after the sun goes down, because the movie directors don't want to set up huge scrims and all these reflectors and diffusers. Here's a low contrast range scene. Again, we don't have a lot of shadows. Okay, so the first thing is what? We have to learn how to see the what? Light. And after that?
Contrast range.
The contrast range in the scene. Second is we have to learn how to see the direction of light. Very, very important. Here's a backlit orb spider. Actually, it's the same spider. Took this on a workshop down in Costa Rica with my friend Rob Knight. Here's a backlit, here's a frontlit. Here, the subject's getting lost. The subject's getting lost in the backlighting. Here, with frontlit, a frontlit subject, we could see all the details. Now, our eyes have a dynamic range of about 11 f-stops. Cameras can only see about 5 or 6 f-stops. That's why we have to learn how to control the light. And another way to control the light then is to move around. What's going on here, and it's really important to learn about the subject, which is yet another photography tip, is here's the female spider, orb spider. Here's the male. If this female doesn't like the male, guess what happens? Gone like that. But anyway, learning about the subject, this was taken with a 70 to 200 millimeter Canon f4 lens. They were both taken. But you can see the big difference, what happens when you see the light. Here's a front light. When you're shooting with front light, it's very flat light, but nice enough light. Direction of light. Here's a backlit shot. Once again, you're going to get a silhouette. Learn how to see a combination of light. Here's backlight and side light. Now, what's going on here is this is called also rim light. When I'm taking a picture, not an HDR shot, the most important thing is to expose for the highlights. I don't want the highlights overexposed and washed out. That's why I'm looking at my histogram and I'm checking all around to make sure that I don't have a spike on the right, and to make sure my overexposure warning isn't blinking. Also called the highlight alert on some cameras. Side light, direction of light here. Quick tip on wildlife photography. When you're photographing a bird, if the eye's not in focus, or bird or any animal, if the eye's not in focus and well lit, you've missed the shot. Top light. I was out of the TWIP studios. Here's Catherine Hall, the host of TWIP Photo. Took this in a room just like this with one light. We're going to be using our model today. Actually, we're going to get that shot today. Direction of light, top light. I did have to work a little on his face here because this was top light, but you can see the shadows right underneath. So if you learn how to see the light, what does it mean? Well, then you could make the right exposure decision. You could either increase the exposure, decrease the exposure, add a flash, use a reflector, use a diffuser, or whatever, which brings us to controlling the light. We can control the light with diffusers. Is the person still on from Brazil? Because I took this picture in this village in Brazil. Here's my son Marco, named Marco after Marco Polo because he traveled around the world with us. Anyway, he's using a diffuser here. You place the diffuser between the light source and the subject to compress that brightness range. We can control the light with reflectors. We're going to do this afternoon. One light, use a reflector, bounce it into the subject. I mentioned my friend Frank Dorhoff before. He has a great expression, which I've copied. Thanks, Frank. When you think you need 2 lights, use 1 light. When you think you need 3 lights, use 1 light. It's amazing what you can do with 1 light. We can also control the light with the flash. Here's a daylight fill and flash picture. It doesn't look, on the left, doesn't look like a flash picture, but we can see the eyes. This is taken over Carnivale in Venice. Here's a non-flash picture. We can't see the eyes. So it's not only compressing the brightness scene, a flash can fill in the shadows. Okay, who's going to volunteer? What have we learned so far? We learned how to see the light, which is seeing the
direction of light.
Direction with second, contrast range, okay? And now we're going to learn how to see the quality of light. Because this, again, why do you learn this? It helps you make exposure and accessory decisions, which we're going to get into more during this class. This picture was taken over in Mongolia. Beautiful soft light. If I'm going to photograph a festival in Mongolia, if I'm going to photograph a local sports team, I'm going to pray for an overcast day because that contrast range is compressed. If I could get to it sometime, I'll tell you a little story about how I got to Mongolia. But look at this beautiful soft light. I think the best time to photograph a sunset or a sunset is after the sunset sometimes, and sunrise before. This was taken out in Monument Valley. Nice soft light after the sun sets. Here's harsh light, hard light. I wouldn't use this picture in a slideshow because of the harsh shadows unless I was illustrating hard light. If I go back, look at this nice soft light picture, not a lot of shadows. And then over here, we have these harsh shadows. This was taken right before the sunset. The other was taken after the sunset. So if we learn how to see this, not only do we know what accessories and what exposure decisions we need to make, but also tells us what kind of mood do we want to create. Because the most important thing, once again, in any photograph is the mood. So the last thing is, not the last thing, but another thing is learn how to see the color of light. People ask me all the time, oh, what's your white balance set on? Well, in here, when we're doing the flash shots, I'm going to set it on flash. When we're using the daylight balanced lights in the Westcott Apollo and the Westcott TD6 Spiderlites, I'm going to be setting this on daylight because these lights are daylight balanced lights. Now, yes, it's so easy to change the white balance. So easy to change the white balance in the digital darkroom, right? In Photoshop, Lightroom, Aperture. I use them all because I have to teach them all. And that's the thing I'm going to talk about in my business class, that you have to keep up with all this stuff. You know, I'm only 35. I have all these gray hairs because it's just driving me crazy. You mentioned the flash drives. Keeping up with this stuff is amazing. Anyway, although it's so easy to change the color of light in the digital darkroom, what I like to do is I like to set the white balance in the camera. So I have as little as possible to do in the digital darkroom. What do I want to do? I want to be out shooting, or I want to be in here shooting with you guys, which again, this show or this class, I call it a show and a class because it's both. It's really going to be a combination of these keynote presentations and a lot of shooting. So let's talk about the color of light, warm light. We get warm light in the late afternoon. Look at these beautiful elephants, actually a mama and a baby here. This picture has a nice warm tone to it. These elephants is taken in the same place, Chobe in Botswana. Look at the difference in the color of the elephants. I'm setting the white balance for daylight, but the color of light changed. We like pictures that are warmer pictures, right? We like these nice warm tone pictures, which is why we like sunset pictures and these inspirational posters that you see, the beautiful sunrises, beautiful sunsets. We like this. Now, I could turn this picture, I could change the mood of this picture into, a warmer tone very easily. But again, set the white balance for the existing lighting situation. Also, the background can make or break a shot. If I took out this elephant in the back, I should do it. I've been meaning to take it out for 10 years. But this one lone elephant in the back, I think, adds a lot to the scene. The background can make or break the shot. So what have we learned so far? We learned how to see the what? Contrast range. Direction. Quality. Right, and color. So far we've done a lot, but there's one other thing we have to learn about, again, which helps us make control decisions, camera control decisions, and it's the intensity of light. In low light, here's another time where I would use a tripod in very low light. This is sunrise in Monument Valley. I'm setting my camera here at probably ISO 200, ISO 400, because I don't want a lot of noise in the picture, but now, today, I don't worry so much about noise. My father had a great expression, which is, if a picture's so boring that you notice it was grain in film, if a picture's so boring that you notice the noise of grain, it's a boring picture. That's A. And B, with Lightroom, Photoshop, and Aperture, we could take out the noise. It's so easy to do this. So I'm not afraid of shooting at high ISOs, but here I did shoot at a low ISO. Most noise, by the way, noise shows up in dark areas. And just one other tip here that I just thought of, because I'm trying to pack as much in here as possible. We're not doing any Photoshop stuff here, but I'll throw in a tip. My most important Photoshop tip or Lightroom tip or Aperture tip is sharpen selectively. Don't sharpen globally. So in this picture, I would only sharpen the tree here. If I sharpen the whole thing globally, I'm going to get more noise here and more noise in the sky. So my number one, if they're looking for quotes of a Photoshop or Lightroom quote, sharpen selectively, don't sharpen globally. And that applies to other things too. Yes, we have a question from Emily.
When do you start to get nervous, like what ISO number is like, I should not go there?
So the question is, when do I get nervous about ISO? Once again, I don't worry about the noise. If I have to shoot at ISO 6400, yesterday we were shooting up here at ISO 6400. Now, my friend Hal Schmidt has a good question that he asks his students. And the question is this, relating to that. He says, is it printable? Now, I have apps. I'm not doing any more books. After 36 books, I'm not doing any more books. I'm just doing apps, I'm doing ebooks, and I'm doing online training and stuff like that. That's where it's at for me. And I don't have big exhibits where I'm going to make even a 30 by 40 inch print. So noise for the web, it doesn't bother me anymore because once again, we could take out the noise. Now, one thing about that, does anyone have an entry-level camera here like a Canon Digital Rebel, or you have a Canon Digital Rebel? Okay. So this, for Emily, you have the 7Ds and the 5Ds, right? You're going to get more noise in low light with your Canon Digital Rebel at ISO 400 than I'm going to get with my 5D Mark II at the same ISO setting in the same lighting conditions. Because as the price of the camera goes up, the amount of noise at the ISO setting goes down. So if you want the cleanest possible picture, then you want to go to a higher level camera. But don't be concerned so much about the noise, because it's the mood. There are photographers, Robert Farber, David Hamilton. These photographers have built their reputation on soft, grainy, out-of-focus pictures. Okay? But if you're going to have an exhibit, if you're going to make a print, you want to be more concerned with noise. So you might want to use a tripod or add a flash. Any other questions about noise? Any questions from anyone around the world? I could take a break to take a glass of water because I'm going at 100 miles an hour here, jamming in as much as I possibly can.
Seems like a lot of people add noise to their photos.
Yeah, so Susan says a lot of people add noise. You go to Photoshop, go to filters, go to noise. Do any of you guys add noise? Here's a reason to add noise or grain. Well, I'm sure you're familiar with pointillism paintings, right? Where the painters just used all these little dots, which, if you look close, it might look like noise or grain. Well, by adding noise, you're doing something. You're taking out some of the reality out of the scene because we see very clearly. What do you think happens when we take out some of our reality? What happens to the picture? It can become more artistic. It can become more creative. Same thing with color. Ansel Adams, right? Ansel Adams, a master photographer. Why do you think he chose to shoot in black and white? Well, one reason was that when you take the color out of the scene, right, you're taking out some of the reality. When you take out some of the reality, your picture can look more artistic. Any of you guys use the Nik software Silver FX Pro? Lori? No? Yes? Chris? Silver FX Pro is a great way to learn and create beautiful black and white images. Now, my number one tip for using any black and white program is this. Do a web search on color filters for black and white photography. Now that might sound funny. Why am I going to do a search on color filters for black and white photography? Well, because I shot black and white. I used to use my father's Linhof 4x5. I used to put these 4x5 black and white, film sheets in there. And I know I'm dating myself. But I had a red filter for landscape. I had an orange filter. I had a yellow filter for people photography. And in all these programs, all these plugins, especially in the Color Effects Pro, they have little pictures of the filters. And you, right, Laura, you click on the red filter and you see that the sky goes black. One thing about black and white, I encourage, especially if you're into landscape photography, turn your pictures into black and white. Take out some of the reality. It's just so much fun to do that. Another tip on black and white photography, everyone knows Ansel Adams. Not everyone, but a lot of people know he's master landscape photographer. Do a search if you're into black and white photography, not only on color filters, but do a search on, I want to see if any of you guys know this, Karsh, Joseph Karsh. Okay, Dave knows Karsh, Joseph Karsh, Karsh of Ottawa, a master black and white photographer. Dave, you probably saw that picture of Hemingway that he took with a sweater like this. You could see every pore on his face, every hair of his beard. Karsh of Ottawa, and amazing. So this is how you learn about photography. We're going to talk about, in setting goals, the importance of looking at the master's work. And that's going to be coming up. Intensity of light. Okay, so here this is very high contrast. So what we can do here is we can shoot at that low ISO that Emily likes, and we don't have to worry about noise grain. Just a little behind the scenes picture. I wanted this shot. There's a big difference between taking a picture and making a picture. I'm a travel photographer. I make pictures. A photojournalist goes out there and he or she shoots really what's there. So today in the studio and tomorrow and the next day, we're going to be making pictures. So I made this picture by asking this guy to ride back and forth on the top of this dune, holding his reins up like this. I asked him to go back and forth about 100 times, paid him $5. So I got this shot with a little bit of action and kicking up some of the sand. In my people photography presentation, I'm sure we're going to get questions. Do you pay people? I pay people when I go to foreign countries, excuse me, because I'm getting something out of the picture. I think they should.
Can I ask you a little question?
No, I'm in the middle of a presentation.
So this question was asked earlier, but it's relevant to that last picture as well with the camel.
Oh, let me go back.
The question was, did you spot meter for the horse, or in this case, silhouette shot? And what did you meter on if you did?
Okay, this is a very good question. This is why, again, I'm going so fast I can't pack in all this stuff, and sometimes I forget.
That's why we're here to ask you questions.
If we learn how to see the light, we can make the right exposure decisions. I have my camera set all the time on the evaluative metering system, which meters the whole scene. Here's the thing. If I just leave it on, I'm shooting on aperture priority. Unless I'm taking a flash picture or HDR, I'm shooting on either the aperture priority mode or the shutter priority mode. Believe it or not, A lot of my professional photographer friends, including Juan Ponza, is going to be on at 1 o'clock talking about his nature and wildlife photography. He shoots most of his pictures on the aperture priority mode, okay? So I'm shooting on the automatic mode, and I have my camera set on the evaluative metering system. If we learn how to see the light, what's the brightest part in the scene? The sun. What's the smallest thing in the scene? The sun, right. So if I just leave this on like the average metering or evaluative that's metering the whole scene, it's going to take everything into consideration here, and it's because we have some dark over here, it's going to overexpose the scene, right? So we have to learn how to see the lights and the darks, the contrast range in the scene. So in a scene like this, all we have to do is say, okay, in a scene like this area is small, smaller than the rest of the picture. I have to use the exposure compensation dial on my camera to dial down the exposure, maybe a half a stop, maybe 1 stop. Now, people are reading around the web or watching this around the world on the web, and they're saying, oh, Rick's, this guy's up there, he's underexposing. You shouldn't underexpose because you're going to get more noise in the shadows, which is true. But I'm not really underexposing. I'm exposing for the highlights. You always want to expose for the highlights. You don't want those highlights overexposed and washed out. And if the histogram was up here, I have examples of this coming up, you don't want that spike. You don't want that spike on the right. Okay, the last thing is, trying to keep on schedule here, working and playing with the light. I took this on one of my workshops out in Cody, nice enough shot, but using a drop shadow layer in Photoshop, selecting this cowboy, using a drop shadow layer, I was able to create a perfect shadow of him. I changed the direction of light in Photoshop using the render lighting effects, so it looks like the light now is coming from here rather than flat light, and I warmed up the picture and I softened the picture. So we can play with the light. Getting back to a photojournalist wouldn't do this. Photojournalist goes out there and just shoots what's there. Here's another example of the render lighting effects in Photoshop. My friend Vered Kashlano, if you're watching, Vered, thanks for sharing this picture. We did a book together on studio lighting. She's an excellent studio photographer, nice enough shot, but look, here now we have like a spotlit effect, and we changed the mood of the picture by changing the different colors, okay? So we can play with the light. I mentioned Ansel Adams. One of the big things that he was into was envisioning the end result. I'm going to ask you guys during this week, well, because they're in the studio, maybe you guys out in internet land can think about, what you would do in these different settings, in the soft light setting, in the strobe settings. You could send in some suggestions. We might get to them, who knows. But anyway, when you're in the studio, I want you to envision the end result. Where is the shadow going to fall? Where are the highlights? Shadows are important, which I'm going to get to in a minute. But I was over in Thailand on vacation with my wife. I actually do take vacations every once in a while to get shots. And actually, that brings up yet another point. People say, because I'm so into the social media, I think I have 24,000 people on Google and 16 or 18 on Twitter, and I'm so into this. People say, and it's funny to me, do you still have time to shoot? I'm shooting all the time. In the business talk, I'll talk about this. If you want to do something, you're going to make the time to do it. I make the time to do everything I want. Craig was telling me yesterday. I won't share the number, Craig, but Craig says he has so many emails in his inbox. He says, I don't know how you do it. I don't go to sleep without my inbox being cleared out, which is why I don't sleep, okay? But it's true, right? Anyway, I'm in Thailand on vacation with my wife, and this is the scene how it looked at the average exposure. But I knew that using Adobe Camera Raw in this case, I didn't even need HDR, I could pull out. I could pull out enough information from the shadows and tone down the highlights using the rescue feature, using fill light and rescue to create the image that I saw in my mind's eye. And as photographers, that's what we should really be doing. If we see something cool, yes, sometimes it's great to just, hey, I'm going to shoot. But if we take the time to envision the end result, then we know what we have to do, either before or after. By the way, if you're shooting into the sun, you want to use an aperture of f/22, because if you use an aperture of f/22, you're going to get the starburst. If you use 5/6, you're just going to get a blur.
Rick, can I ask a question about shooting into the sun? It's actually from Mayra Martinez. Can you talk a little bit about safely shooting into the direction of the sun?
Right, safely shooting into the direction of the sun first and foremost requires sunglasses, okay? You don't want to look too much into the sun. I shoot into the sun a lot. So you want to use sunglasses. You don't want to shoot directly into the sun. Live view might be good for this, so you're not looking through the viewfinder, because you can damage your eyes, and this is cumulative, so it can add up, which is probably why I need glasses. And it actually could cause a macular degeneration too, which my father had, which hurts the back of the retina. So it's a very good question. Don't look too much into the sun. But on that note, I'll share one more joke, but it's a philosophy. Someone asked a professional photographer, "What's your day rate?" The professional photographer says, "Well, my day rate is for outdoor photography." He says, "It's $5,000 a day, but if I have to shoot into the sun, it's $7,500. Meaning that it's harder to shoot into the sun. If you're photographing a person, you need a reflector, you need a diffuser, you need a flash, you need an accessory. Shooting into the sun is a little harder, but look, you can get really dramatic results. When you're looking at your histogram, the chant on my workshops is check your histogram. You want to move your histogram to the right. If someone wants a quote, that's the quote. Move the histogram to the right, because most of the, this is actually from Photoshop, but it looks the same on the back of the camera. Most of the information is over on the right. If you have most of the information over here, what's going to happen is you're going to have to even out the tones here, you're going to have to adjust the levels or curves, and your picture in the shadow areas is going to get more grainy, or you're going to get more noise there. Move the histogram to the right. Now, you might be taking a silhouette, and here I'm taking a silhouette. This is out in Fort Worth. What is a good histogram? This is actually a good histogram for this scene. A silhouette will look like this. What does a histogram tell you? Does anyone here not know what the histogram tells you?
I'm foggy on the histogram.
You're foggy? Well, we're going to be talking, we might get a chance to talk about fog filters a little bit later. But what this is telling us is this. You could look at a scene. It's all about seeing the light. I can't stress this enough. What the histogram is telling us is the distribution of the light levels in a scene. Imagine for every light level in this scene, there's a brick. I learned this from Julian Cost, one of my favorite Photoshop instructors, an amazing person. She has a wonderful book, by the way, called Window Seat. She's all, so she is a Photoshop instructor, excuse me, but a wonderful, wonderful photographer. I learned this from her. You imagine the different light levels as bricks. So if we have these shadow areas over here, we have, substantial shadows over here. We have substantial highlights over here. What's lacking? Midtones are lacking. That's why for this scene, this is the right type of histogram. But again, you don't want that spike on the right. If your pictures are overexposed more than about one stop, what happens is you can't rescue that information. Julian Cost might be able to do it, but if it's overexposed more than one stop, you probably can't rescue that in Photoshop, Lightroom. Well, I know she does Photoshop or Lightroom. But talking about seeing the light, the other thing was, or one of the other things was controlling the light, right? So here, I use curves more than levels. I just pull this curve down. If I want a picture darker, I'll click the center point and pull it down to the bottom right. If I want it lighter, I'll click it and pull it up to the top left. But we could turn a boring shot like this into a really cool sunset shot like this. Point here is don't delete your pictures. Teaching a workshop out in Fort Worth, it was a long day. We come back to the Fort Worth stockyards. Everybody wants to start happy hour, like I usually like to do. Lori's laughing because she knows. And we're going to have happy hour after this class and a pizza party. We're going to get to know each other a little more. People said, oh, the light's bad. I want to start happy hour. I don't want to take the shot. The guy who stayed with me, one guy in the workshop who stayed with me, took the shot. It was on the cover of American Photo magazine. Okay? So don't think about it. If you learn how to see the light, he saw the light. He knew we could pull out a lot from the light. Light illuminates, shadows define, Kendra and Susan. A very, very important tip. Light illuminates, shadows define. Here, what's cool about this shot? It's the shadow. I'm in San Miguel de Allende here. Just a little tip here. I rented this Volkswagen bus, and we put it in like many different places around San Miguel. It was like our prop for the day. If you look at my HDR book, or actually my HDR book, and in my app, you'll see all the different places we set this. But anyway, look at the shadow. The shadow makes this scene. Light illuminates, shadows define. When you guys are working with me in these lighting setups, the shadows are going to be really important. I want you to see the highlights. I want you to see the shadows. I want you to work with the shadows, because shadows are the soul of photograph. What makes this picture? It's the shadow here. This is early morning in San Miguel de Allende. I had been there the year before. I knew where the light was coming from. I was able to get this shot. John, I think we tried to work on a shot like this. When we use a white background, we're going to try to work with the shadows and get a shot like this. Give yourself an assignment. Well, not this weekend, because I really want you to watch the whole class, but next weekend, go out there and give yourself the assignment. How can I come back with 5 pictures that have really good shadows? Another tip about shadows: shadows can be your friend. I mean, this is a fun shot, and one of the reasons why I like teaching workshops, I was working hard on this, and someone said, hey, let's have some fun, more fun, let's try this. And just here's a shot of me and my shadow. Just thought I'd throw that in. And, you know, you could recognize that it's me. This is why shadows are so important.